All righty.
And then we have our rental resale, and that is an occupied rentals. There's no evictions. It's not a turnkey. It has not been renovated in the past year. The income properties was renovated last year. That was the other top part of that. But so this will be not renovated in the past year. And it's better for more experienced investors. And then the sell price is based on required repairs. So for example, a house is worth 110. You get an inspection done and say there's $10,000 worth of work that needs done, new carpet, new cupboards, maybe update the bathroom. There's a tenant already in there that's paying the rent, so it doesn't make sense to do that. So our team would probably sell that property for 100, even though it's worth 110, knowing that when that tenant does eventually move out, it could be 6 months, 12 months, 5 years from now, you might have to put some money into it to get it back up to the conditions that you need to re-rent it. So that's what we call our rental resale.
Yeah. And how many? Yeah. Well, how many of our teams, Tim, do you know approximately are doing this as an option?
Maybe 3 or 4. More of our more experienced teams. Our Cincinnati teams have been around a long time. Our Jacksonville teams that have been doing it a long time.
Right. So the vast majority is the previous one that we did, but occasionally we'll have a rental resale, and it is nice for some people because there's a lot of houses out there that would be great rentals. The owner wants to sell them, but there's a good paying tenant in there. So you don't want to pay full turnkey. Don't use that phrase. Prices, because there's all this stuff that needs to be done. So it's a good option for those who know what they're getting into.
Or to go in and rehab it when that tenant is already there and they have a lease and everything's okay. To go in and put all new stuff in and then have to do it when they move out, it doesn't make any sense.
Mm-hmm. All righty. And finally,
we have our new construction. This is basically our income properties. And I'll use the word that they used to use all the time on steroids, right? These are new construction. These are our teams that have new construction. And this is also you're going to have builder warranties on this. So this is what we love about new construction.
Yeah, we have a lot of people who really want that. It's a little bit easier of a product to own from out of state. That's how Rich and I started. We bought, I think our first 10 properties were brand new, bought them from builders. So the key is making sure you're buying in the right development that's near jobs and, it has growing infrastructure around it. So yeah.
And what we find is there's people waiting to get. I mean, think about if you're a renter and you have a chance to get in a brand new house, you're gonna pay a little extra for your rent, and you're gonna get on a waiting list. So there's always usually a waiting list for new builds because that's get to rent a brand new house. That's outstanding.
Especially now. Especially now.
Getting out of apartments.
Yep.
Right, and and when I'm speaking to people, I kind of give the pros and cons of renovated existing properties as opposed to new construction, and some people they really want new construction. They just feel much better about it. They don't want to have to replace a water heater in 5 years. They like the fact that everything's got a builder's warranty. And other people, and there's nothing wrong with that, and other people are like, yeah, no, that's fine. I'd rather get the slightly better cash flow. It's still been fully renovated, but it is an older house. So something that maybe was fine when I bought it might not be in 3 years. And that's okay. So it just depends on what your mentality is. Some people just really like the new construction, and as a result, we've got lots of our property teams that are now exclusively or partially doing new construction.
And the returns are so close now that 3 years ago it wasn't. A rehabbed house returns are so much better, but now they're so equal, or pretty close to equal. So it makes a lot of sense for a lot of people that for a new build.
And sometimes even cheaper because sometimes the mortgage rates are lower for a new home. Yep. and the insurance. So
that's correct.
There was I just saw a question about it would be nice if the property, if you could verify rents with the property manager before closing, and I say 100%.
Absolutely.
100%.
Yeah.
Because first of all, nobody actually ever really knows what the property is going to rent for. It's free market, right? It's just who's going to pay. But based on what they've seen with comps and with other properties and their experience, that they're guessing. But it's important for you to know that what somebody thinks it's going to rent for is not necessarily what it will rent for. And you can do your own due diligence too, and go on different websites.
Yeah, there's a bunch.
Yeah.
Although to that end, I mean, the other number that's really difficult to quantify sometimes is the property taxes. We like our property teams to list not what they're paying in property taxes from when they bought it 6 months or 2 months ago, but what they forecast the taxes to be once the new owner has it. And most of them do that. But the problem is there's a certain amount of guesswork based on the millage rate and the county laws and everything else. But in terms of rents, if one of our property teams consistently overstated the rents, there would be the hue and cry you could hear all the way to Toledo. So most of them try to underpromise and overdeliver.
Yeah, I mean, we'd hear about it and they'd get in trouble from Tim. Tim's a scary guy, man.
Tim would be mad at that property team.
Yes,
They'd be in trouble.
I love my teams. That's the secret sauce.
Yeah. He was a linebacker, right? What were you?
Yes, I was linebacker.
Yeah, so no one's going to mess with you. Yeah.
So Leah writes in and wants to, ask Tim to describe, and I think this is a good point, Tim. Maybe if you could describe what the teams go through to offer new builds. Like what is the benefit to a member buying a new build through our teams, or not our teams, but the property teams, as opposed to just approaching people directly?
Yeah, that's actually a great question. What happens is our teams have built a relationship with the builders. And a lot of times, like Ben had mentioned earlier, they'll have they're going to build 100 houses, and 20 they set aside for rental. And so what will happen is they'll go to some of our teams and they'll sell those 20 rentals early into the development, around the development as they're building the other houses. And by doing that, the bill is considered as seed money, and that allows us to get a better price. So let's just say the house that gets built next door to the rental that you bought is going to be an older occupant. They're going to charge $220. A good chance you bought that for $190,000, $200,000. So you get a little instant equity right off the top.
Mm-hmm. And in many cases, the property teams have gone to these developers, explained their relationship with RealWealth, how there's some kind of a bulk. There'll be X number of property purchases, they hope, over the next few years. And so they can negotiate better prices than if you walked into their model home off of the street. Not always, but many times they're able to get better prices.
Yep, and they do when they're doing new construction. They've all the permits and all the work. I mean, for example, I was just in Fort Myers last week with one of our Jacksonville team that's going to expand there. That's coming soon, and we'll be talking about that real soon. But they spent a year buying this land, talking to the city, understanding where they had to put the sewers in. All that. There's so much work that goes into that, and it takes up to a year before they can actually start building.
Right. Okay,
so
we got to get.
A question about North Carolina. You've been really trying to make that work and get inventory for us from North Carolina because we like that market.
We're a month away.
Ah, excellent. Because someone just asked about that.
Yep, Charlotte.
Keep going, man. We want it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's coming. It's coming. It's we're in our due diligence right now with 3 different teams.
It is. Neil writes in, and there's a very good point. It's also very important to get a home inspection, even on new construction homes.
Absolutely.
I get that question a lot. Do I still need an inspection even though it's new? Yeah, because just because it's new doesn't mean that it's defect free. And again, they usually pay for themselves.
Yeah, and Kathy makes the point. Kathy always makes the point is get that home inspection too right before your warranty wears out. And a new build, new construction. A lot of times, like the builder will have a 2-year home warranty. We recommend maybe getting an inspection before that 2 years up to make sure everything's good.
Here's a great question. I think it's really important, and all of us are seasoned, right? Ben, you went through the downturn. Tim, whoa, you went through the downturn.
Yeah, I definitely went through that.
I think you were dragged behind it with me too. So someone said here, and it's a great question, no one knows what the future holds, but they said there's talk that maybe in 2021 there could be an increase in foreclosures. How would that affect these investments?
Well, there was talk it was going to happen. It was going to happen in 2018, 2019, 2020. What we found in the last downturn, to your question, Kathy, is the rents didn't go down. They actually went up a little bit in all the markets that I was participating in back in the day. So really, you just had to hold, just got to hold tight until the prices went back up because the rent didn't go down, so you were still getting your normal rent.
Yeah, I think
more people need homes than less.
That's really the key is understanding where you're investing and where are the most recession-proof places. So would I own $1 million rental in San Francisco right now that rents for $3,000 a month? No. But would I own 10 properties $10,000, $100,000 properties spread
Around
across the
Cleveland
United
Clinic.
States that rent for $1,000 each. And if 50% of them went unrented, I would still be collecting rent on the other 5, or I could afford to lower the rents if I needed to. But I think we can all agree, we all went through that time. I had my major portfolio in Texas, rents went up.
Yep.
Yeah, and let's see, what other areas? Tennessee, they did. It just depends. We're very careful about where we're buying, and there are areas that tend to be more affordable in that area. So the people who can no longer afford the fancy house might have to downsize into the houses that we have. Yeah, Ben, thoughts on that? Because you went through it too.
Yeah, just last thing, but let me jump in. This is before I forget this. I'm getting older, so my memory's not as good as it used to be. but what we find is during the downturn, the people that lived in A went to B, and people that B went to C, and people that lived in C went back to mom and dad. So we're right there in the B, so it's perfect.
Yeah, we're in B, kind of C plus. Yeah.
Man, I got dragged through the. I ended up having to do 2 short sales back when I lived in Arizona back in 2008. So I got dragged through the mud as well, just like most of us did. And yeah, that's a good point, Tim. People just kind of step down, so you got to be real careful. That's why we're not buying the fancy Corinthian columned properties on the hill, because we'd rather be in the bread and butter properties that are much more likely to stay rented at any given point in time.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you wouldn't want to be caught flipping homes, I think, in that case, or in the middle of building.
I was, and it didn't turn out so good.
That's how it's.
But I learned.
But as far as rentals,
yeah.
When you have foreclosures, people have to rent.
Yep.
So just real quick, we'll just go through this quickly. Our member follow-up process after a member purchases a property through one of the property teams, we call them 1 month after the purchase, and about 3 times a year after that. Just go over their feedback, share it with the team, make any adjustments as necessary, and give any feedback, positive and negative, back to that property team so they can either keep doing what they're doing or adjust what they're doing. And that seems to be working out pretty well.
Tim puts a lot of pressure on the teams if there is a complaint to fix it, because we want to be able to brag about how great these teams are, and we can't do that if we've got complaints.
That's right.
Exactly. And one little bright spot, I'm really glad that we included this slide, is that we were all wringing our hands with worry in late March, like, I hope everything turns out okay. And believe it or not, look at this, the perfect test of the property teams. The rent collections, 93, and 86%, about what it normally is. Especially April and May. So it wasn't the sky is falling scenario. Some of our property teams, and Kathy, elaborate on this because you did most of those early on webinars, but it was a fairly rosy outlook. Rosy considering the circumstances. It was not Chicken Little. The rents were coming in. The rental applications had actually ticked up in some cases in terms of quality, and the numbers there they are.
Well, in June, and that's based on the 15, so that's on its way to be over 93%.
Okay.
Yeah, June, that's only halfway through the month, so a lot of people are on payment plans now that they're, in this situation, they're going to be able to pay the second half of their rent when they get their second paycheck, because it's those kinds of times right now. But I'll tell you what, right now, nobody wants to get evicted. No, if you've got in these states that we're in, these are landlord friendly states. So it means, personal responsibility, you got to pay your rent or you have to leave. And if you get evicted, that's filed, and a property manager can look that up and see if you have an eviction history. So right now, the quality of your home, the safer at home thinking that we now have, that's not going to leave our brains anytime soon. That's kind of the new reality that people have. And nobody wants to not have a great, like having a home is top priority. So in mid-March, we didn't know that. All we knew is there was these eviction moratoriums, and like, oh my gosh, if people don't have to pay their rent, they're not going to. What are we going to do? And so we huddled, and Tim brought all the teams together to say, how do we help the tenants be able to pay? They all brainstormed together and came up with ways to come up with lists of, here's the stimulus checks that you can get. Here's how you apply for loans, SBA loans. Here's a list of job openings if you lost your job. Here's if you're having any financial issues, we can put you on a payment plan. And they just came up with these options that made it possible for the tenants to stay. We even had owners, landlords saying, look, we'll give a discount, and that ended up not being necessary. I know in Ohio, Missy said, hey, look, if you pay your rent 2 months in advance, we'll give you a 5% or 10% discount, and people did.
Mhm.
So it ended up being almost better rent collection in a lot of these areas. And then the big thing that shocked us, we had no idea, it makes sense though, was that they've had stronger applications than
Yep.
last year or in the past because
Yep.
so many people are wanting to move into these affordable single family homes with yards.
Mhm. Well,
That's
we've
right.
got like 3 different questions on the HEROES Act. Do you want to address that at all, Kathy, or just what your opinion is?
No, not on this webinar because I need to understand it better. What about you?
Yeah,
Yeah.
same thing. I'm just like, yeah. I mean, I'm a news junkie, but in terms of the ins and outs of that, I don't know. I'm just happy that it's not like everyone's like, nope, I'm not paying my rent. I don't have to. It has not materialized.
Not at all. Not at all. People,
Yeah.
again, these are not, California is a whole nother thing. California is the let's not pay rent state.
Right.
But in these states, they know that they have to pay their rent, that there's no getting around that. And if
Yeah.
they don't, within 45 days, they're out. And
Oh, I
the
remember
sheriff will come take.
Well, I remember when we first found out all this shutdown was going on, and we had a big team meeting, our teams, and like Kathy said, we were like, "Oh my goodness, what do we do?" After the shock wore off, we went right into how do we solve these and how do we come up with solutions. And that's what I love about our teams.
Yep.
Yeah.